Welcome to all Caribbean entrepreneurs. If you've been ready and waiting to take your business digital and get paid online while you sip something strong on the beach, this podcast is for you. We'll hear from the Caribbean's finest entrepreneurs on topics like e-commerce, business development, brand building, social media, their wins and failures. This is the only place in the region helping you navigate the digital age from the Caribbean's perspective. This is Digipreneur FM. And now, let's give it up for the Digiboss himself, Mr. Keron Rose.
Thank you to everybody tuning in to another episode of the Digipreneur FM podcast. And as usual, it is your boy, Mr. Rose. DJ, you gotta fade us all the way out. You gotta fade us all the way out, because we gotta talk to the people. It is Sunday, June 23rd. And this is episode number, I'm just confirming because sometimes I forget. This is episode number 165. Yeah, man, it happens sometimes. Sometimes I forget which episode we are on, and I got to go back and check. But how are you guys doing? How are you lovely gentlemen and women? How are you doing on this lovely Sunday morning? Usually I hardly ever do episodes on Sunday. Sunday, I'm usually just, Sunday vibes, doing Sunday things, not doing much work. Kind of just take the mornings easy and just relax, But I felt like today was a day where I wanted to do an episode. And the episode kind of deviates from, what we normally talk about, digital strategy, entrepreneurship, business, e-commerce, marketing. You guys already know the deal, right? We'll be back to regular scheduled program this week. But this episode, number 165, is I wanted to kind of tongue twister. I wanted to explore a thought that has been coming up a lot in conversations, over the past couple of weeks. And that thought, that idea is, now, as you guys know, currently I'm based here in Trinidad and Tobago, right? That thought to that idea is going to be relatable to many others in the Caribbean region. And that is it time to migrate, even if temporarily? That is the thought. That is the question that has been coming up tremendously over the past couple of weeks. So I know it's not me. I know it's not just me. And to hear other people's perspectives, their thoughts, has definitely, given myself a lot to think about. And I wanted to kind of, explore this thought process, right? I don't think there's a right or wrong answer to this. Many are going to say yes. Some are going to say no. Others are going to say no, they want to stay because they want to be a part of the solution. Everything's valid, right? So this isn't a discussion to say right or wrong, but I just wanted to explore it. Especially the idea that even if you do migrate, even if it's temporarily, I think the temporary migration, I think, is mandatory. I think it's absolutely mandatory. And that's because I believe, and I'm going to get into it, but I'll let you know my stance is up front. When I ask the question of, is it time to migrate? I think this is the best time to migrate from the Caribbean. Not just because of the wide array of problems that we are having that, to be honest, doesn't really feel like we want solutions for. And I mean, I don't even have to, dive into that because you guys already know the state of the region and where our leaders and. But over the last year, the rest of the world, and I explored this in a previous episode, the rest of the world has really been opening up their tourism sectors with people who are digital nomads. And even if you aren't a digital nomad, there's been more visas or more ways to now become citizens or residents of different countries than ever before, right? So the ability to migrate has never been this high. And typically, you already know Caribbean people, when they migrate, they tend to go to three places: the US, the UK, and Canada. And those typically are the three hardest places to migrate to and the most expensive, right? And they don't give much thought to anywhere else beyond those three places. And the rest of the world over the last year has been opening up so many different avenues for you to come and stay there. It could be temporarily because there's a lot of different visas that have popped up. Just because this one popped up and I had to laugh, right? Just so you get an idea as to what I mean. Yo, Japan rolled out a visa. And that visa is, I'm pulling up the article right now. Here we go. Sorry, not Japan. South Korea has just rolled out a new visa called the K-Culture Training Visa. Hear me out. South Korea has launched their K-Culture Training Visa, and that will allow foreigners who want to train in K-pop dancing, choreography, modeling. That will allow you to come and learn the K-pop culture in South Korea. Now, wow. Absolutely wow. So you see what I'm saying? That the world is truly opening up, and there are so many new avenues for you to go and spend some time elsewhere. So, is it time to migrate? I think right now is the best time to migrate. And again, I'm just going to give you my thoughts, then I'm going to kind of dive in deeper, right? I think it's the best time to migrate. All crime and lack of growth aside in the Caribbean region, I think now is the best time to migrate. You've never had this many opportunities to migrate. It's never happened before, because a lot of the new avenues to migrate have only opened up post-pandemic, but more recently over the last year. There's so many new avenues to migrate, right? Especially when you're looking at Asia, when you're looking at South America, when you're looking at Europe. Like, there's a lot of avenues for you to migrate now. Now, is it time to migrate even temporarily? My answer to that is emphatically yes. And I say emphatically yes because one of the biggest problems that we are having here in Trinidad and Tobago is there is such a depletion and lack of perspective and world views. There is the real 1% in Trinidad is the people that have perspective and have that worldly view. And that's so important because you can't solve problems or really grow the society when your only train of thought or your only thought process is the society that you live in. And you're not someone who thinks about, how are things happening in the rest of the world? And how can we take lessons from other cultures, other countries, and tailor it to what we have going on over here and solve these problems, or create new solutions, or create new businesses, or raise our standards. You can't do that if you do not have perspective and a worldly view, because all you know is here. And so much of the fight down and pushback is because people continue to say things like, but that's not how we do it here. Yeah, it's not working though. It's not working. Yeah, I know that's how you do it here, and it's not working. But I can't expect you to do better if you don't know better. Whoops. Oh my goodness, I just hit my headphone stand. That's what happens when you talk with your hands. And so because of that, I really believe that every citizen, doesn't matter what Caribbean island you are from, the Caribbean individually is a very small place. All of the Caribbean islands are very small places. I think everybody who can, okay? Because I know there's going to be some people, oh, not everybody. Again, that's the thing that I'm talking about, right? You will make a suggestion, and the first thought process is, not everybody can do that. Oh, God, we know that. So whoever that can. I believe whoever can should at least temporarily migrate for a minimum of 1 year. Go and live outside of the Caribbean. And I think you need it. You'll be better off. Your personal development will happen. You will see things. You'll be exposed to things that you have never been exposed to. Because guess what? Your vacations don't mean shit. Your vacations don't mean jack shit. We see people coming from the rest of the world, Canada, the UK, and they come and they travel to Trinidad, they travel to Jamaica all the time. They bring their currency and they live it up. And they say things, oh my God, Jamaica's amazing, Trinidad's amazing, it's all amazing. They're not here to see the negative or what happens, because it doesn't affect them. They don't need to do any business here or line up in any of the lines. They don't have to go. They just come, they enjoy themselves, and they go back home. So that's why the Caribbean will always be amazing to outsiders, just like how when you leave the country and you go visit any of the first world countries, you're like, oh my God, everything is just so convenient. You could just do things. And that's amazing. But you have no idea how it works. You have no idea the entire ecosystem that has to be built in order for those things to work and work well. You have no idea. You just use it. So until you go and live somewhere else for a year, it's only then you will start to learn and be exposed and see the good, the bad, and see what you need to learn. You will see the things that you need to learn, good and the bad, and then you can come back to the Caribbean. You can come back to Trinidad with a full appreciation to say, okay, I see why I love Trinidad. I see where Trinidad is good. I see where Trinidad is negative. They do things like this over here. This would be a great help. Maybe I can pioneer or initiate something over here to solve these particular problems, because this was a great way of how they solve these problems over here. And to be honest, me, living the majority of my adult life in back home in Toronto, that is what has helped me tremendously be in the Caribbean, because I know what the standard is for when we're talking digital, right? And then me living here, I've had to live here to see, to understand the things that we are going through, and then to figure out what works, what doesn't work, and then come up with the plans, the strategies to get to where we would do things at a level in the States or Canada or the UK. And that could only happen because I came from Toronto. So you can't build a solution to a problem when you've never been exposed. So even if the migration is temporary, even if it's for 1 year, even if you go and take a visa in one of these countries and you go spend man, I don't give a damn if it's K-pop. If you go and you take a friggin' visa to learn K-pop in South Korea, think about this for a second, right? What if our Trinidad artists spent a year in South Korea on the K-pop visa, and they then learned, because K-pop is one of the biggest industries in the entire world when it comes to music, what if they spent a year on the K-pop visa in South Korea, and they learned the marketing, they learned the business, they learned, because again, K-pop is very specific to their culture, all right? So they could learn how these people are building the business, how they're building up the genre, learn about the different opportunities that Trinidad could potentially do. Like, you gotta go out there and learn. So if you take that year visa to go learn K-pop, you're not only are you going to be exposed to a completely different culture, completely different market. You're going to see how they have grown an entire industry to become a global phenomenon. And now you can come back to Trinidad and be like, yo, this is what we got to do. This is how we have to move. This is where we got to go. These are the things we got to put in place. You got to do that. And this is why I'm having this episode, because we don't have people thinking on that level. We had a whole week-long Caribbean music con. And we're on stage talking about the negative stigma of Trinidad music. Of course there's a negative stigma. The music is negative, but then outside of that, everybody getting dropped, everybody getting murdered on the outside. So of course there's a negative. You're getting murdered behind the things that you're talking about. So of course there's going to be a negative stigma. You're not changing that. You're not changing that anytime soon. But we're not talking about realistic solutions. Nobody has grown. Nobody. Soca hasn't reached the level of K-pop. Trinidad music has not reached the level of K-pop. Nobody has built what K-pop has done. And this is not a knock on soca or anything, right? This is not a knock. I'm just making the point that we lack perspective. And if I was a Trinidad artist, or if I was involved in it, this would be a visa that I say, wow, I need that perspective. I want to see what those guys are doing over there. I myself need to get exposed. I need to develop myself personally so I can come back and be a part of the solution collectively. Let me go to South Korea and take that K-pop visa. Spend a year out there. Now, moving on. For me, one of the reasons why, this thought process and this question has been coming up is because, I hit 10 years in Trinidad, right? And whilst I've done a lot, nothing has really changed from since I moved here in 2014. Nothing's really changed. I don't do anything differently. Like when I moved here, I don't do anything differently. I pay my bills the exact same way. And when I moved here and I got my bank accounts, the first thing I did was I added all of my bills to my online banking. And when I was doing that, everybody that I spoke to at the time was like, what do you mean you pay your bills online? Because paying your bills online wasn't a thing in 2014. And now, because people didn't realize that was a thing, now you have companies like Digicel, you have TN Tech, you're going to have an upcoming WhatsApp. Like, you have entities coming up with their own applications. And the big feature that they're pushing is, you can now pay us on the app. And people are like, oh my God, we can finally pay our bills online. No, you could have always paid your bills online. But online banking to many of the public isn't a thing. If you knew online banking was a thing, you would have been paying your bills online for 10 plus years, because that was all there long before I came here. I've been looking at the same FCB interface since I came. I've been paying my bills the exact same way since I came. No different. All right? So not much has really changed since I moved here. We've regressed. That's the only thing. We have not moved forward. I don't do anything differently. Nothing. And that's concerning. Because when I look at the rest of the world and what has happened and what has changed in 10 years, it's significant. So we're not progressing in any meaningful way in Trinidad. There are conversations, there are talks, there are things happening in other Caribbean islands. But the funny thing is as much as we read the headlines, go to the conferences, and we see, at least they're talking about certain things in government, the people on the ground still feel like, nothing has changed. Right? They themselves, people in Jamaica, and we look at Jamaica as, they're one of the more forward-thinking islands in the region. Same thing with Barbados. And when you talk to Jamaicans and when you talk to Bajans, they're like, it's all talk. We're not feeling any of the effects, any of the changes that they're talking about. And that's really concerning. Right? Same thing right here in Trinidad. What the difference in Trinidad for me is when I look at what Mr. Andrew Holness, the PM over in Jamaica, when I look at what Mia Motley is talking about, when I see what Bermuda is talking about, even when I see what Grenada is talking about, like all the conversations that are happening in Parliament seem very progressive. Like I feel like there is a forward-thinking plan that if I was Jamaican, I myself would be saying, all right, things are rough right now, but at least there's a plan, and I would like to be a part of that plan. Here in Trinidad, there has been no plan. There's been no semblance of a plan. Matter of fact, collectively, everybody is saying this is the first time in the history of Trinidad we're flying with no plan. Right? We are still talking about gas. And that's about it. There's no real plan to improve or do anything differently. And there's nothing that I have heard from any of the politicians that make me feel like I want to invest more time, energy into the country. Because what am I doing it for? You have not given me any reason to continue giving my energy, my time, my blood, my sweat, my tears into building here. You haven't given me a reason to feel like there's a long-term future here. You have not. And every time I look at, the kids that are growing up in Trinidad, I just look and I just shake my head because I'm like, I really don't know what y'all are going to be doing. The education, at one point in time, the education in Trinidad was world class. And I think it was world class for a particular time period because we are stuck 30 years ago. We're not teaching kids anything that's of relevance today, which is why people are coming out and they're so underprepared. They don't even have the right mindset to thrive in today's day. Moving on. Then the next problem that the next big challenge that me and some colleagues have been talking about, and this is more of my internal circle, is we are still having the same conversations, trying to solve the same problems, and many of these problems predate me even living in Trinidad. So, for example, there was a conference that happened maybe about a week ago, and the conference was what is it called? It was the 4th International Conference on Small Island Developing States. It happened in Antigua. And the UN, this is hosted by the UN, the United Nations Department of Economic and Social Affairs. And there was a lot of things that came out of it. And again, the information that was brought out is eye-opening because, this is information that, I've just heard about in conversations or in passing, but now to see the UN bring out the data, and then when people are commenting, people are like, yo, this is the same problems for 20, 30 plus years. And I'm like, God damn. But let me say a couple of the things that they spoke about, right? Some of the key problems that they're addressing. So one, the brain drain. Out migration is at an all-time high. And out migration, let me tell you, let me pull up the stat. Between 2000 and 2022, over 3.2 million people have left the Caribbean. Over 3.2 million people have left the Caribbean. You have to keep in mind that the majority of our Caribbean countries don't even have 1 million people. We're still in the thousands, right? We're still in the thousands. Like, I think, like, let's look at Turks and Caicos population. I'm just Googling it real quick. Turks and Caicos population. Just to give you an idea, right? 3.2 million people is significant because Turks and Caicos has 45,000 people, right? Let's look at St. Lucia. St. Lucia population, 179,000 people. You see where I'm going with this? The majority of our islands don't have 1 million people, right? Barbados population, 281,000. So for 3.2 million people to migrate is significant. So we are worse off than ever when it comes to the brain drain and people leaving. We also, next biggest problem is the aging population. People are obviously having less kids, less and less and less kids. So there's an aging population. So yeah, try digitally transforming an aging population, which is also why I get so much pushback, and people are always like, yeah, what about the old people? What about the old people? And I'm like, yo, we can't keep building for the old people. Yes, we'll keep them in mind, but we can't keep building for the old people. They're going to better places soon. Okay? I hope it's not too soon, if you get me. But the reality is they're going to better places soon. So we can't keep building for the old population. We have to build for the future. And that's I think that's a thought process that always bothers me. Every time you try to implement something new to better streamline what you are doing, you, the person who are building it, you're not saying, here, do this, and this is the only thing. Like, you also have provisions for people who don't want to do this, and the things that people don't want to do. So, for example, paying bills online. It's not that it's not that in introducing new ways to pay your bills online that you can no longer pay your bills in person. No, there are still tons of ways to pay your bills in person. However, you will announce, hey, guys, we've created a new way for you to pay your bills online, and then half the comments are like, but what about the old people? They're not going to pay their bills online. What about the people who want human interaction? And you're like, at no point did we say paying your bills online with this new way is shutting down the 30 other ways to pay your bills. Of the 30 ways, maybe we've removed 5. But you still have 25 other ways to pay your bills in cash, in person. But that's the mindset that people have. Just because you've rolled out something new, they're starting to attack you and saying, no, we don't want that. What about the old people? And you're like, but they have their own avenues. What about the people who don't want to do any of those things and have been dying for the new changes that we're launching? Again, we constantly want to degrade or downplay anything that moves us towards the future, and our excuse is, what about the old people? Anyways, we have an aging population, and we have extremely slow growth facing all Caribbean populations. Now, let me pull out some other key stats. 29 of the 57 small island developing states, SIDS, are located in the Caribbean. You hear that? 29 of the 57 identified small island developing states are located in the Caribbean. This represents over 63% of the total population of all of SIDS. Because the Caribbean right now is home to 46.5 million people collectively, right? That's 63% of the total population of SIDS. So we have slow population growth. The Caribbean is the slowest growing among all SIDS and is expected to increase marginally. Oh boy. And again, it's also expected to, the population is also expected to decrease from 63% to 58%, given the faster rate of growth from the other SIDS populations, right? And then you have to talk about the outmigration. So like I said, the outmigration, so aging population plus the outmigration, over 3.2 million people have left. And then you also got to get into the diminishing opportunities for the youth and the brain drain, right? Remember, like I said, mentally, we keep on talking about the old population. Doesn't matter what you talk about. They continuously talk about, yeah, but what about the old people? What about the young people? What about the young people? And I want to read this part to you from the article. Diminishing youth opportunities and the brain drain. In the Caribbean, the impact of outmigration is deeply felt due to various contributing factors: geographical isolation, limited resources, vulnerability to climate change impacts, socioeconomic fragility, and lack of opportunities, particularly for the youth. The phenomenon of the brain drain where skilled professionals leave their home countries has emerged as a major concern in many Caribbean SIDS. Now, side note, we also know that in the 70s, the 80s, when there was the Caribbean Windrush, when, there was mass migration to, the UK, the US, Canada, this is even bigger than that, right? So just for perspective. So Jenny Carlson of the UNFPA advised that young people aged 10 to 24 years account for a quarter of the Caribbean population, and their needs must be seen as a priority. We have to leverage and harness the youth cohorts that we still have in the region. We have to prioritize investment in job creation and education and in health services that are tailored for the youth. And we need to give them a voice at the table of decision making. Over the past 2 decades, the Caribbean has experienced a significant net population loss due to outmigration. Over 3.2 million people have left the Caribbean SIDS. Ashley, oh wow, I love this name. Ashley Lashley. I'm sure you had fun growing up. Ashley Lashley, a youth advocate and head of the Ashley Lashley Foundation in Barbados, discussed the migration decisions of young people, stating, and this is key: after studying for your bachelor's for 3 years or even your master's for a year, it's really hard to come out and get a job. We have a very serious problem where a lot of the degrees are not aligning with the jobs that are available. According to the UNDESA report, the Caribbean region dominates the SIDS diaspora, accounting for 86% of the total migrant stock originating from SIDS in 2020. John Wilmot, director of the UNDESA Population Division, who leads the team responsible for the report, highlighted the significant impact of migration on the demographic profiles of many SIDS, noting that for nearly half of the Caribbean SIDS, the diaspora exceeds 30% of the total population at origin. In Jamaica, for example, the number of migrants residing abroad increased from 860,000 to 1.1 million people between 2002 and 2020. The diaspora accounted for approximately 33% of Jamaica's total population in 2000 and surged to 40% by 2020, positioning Jamaica among the top 15 countries globally with the largest diaspora relative to its population size. This demographic trend underscores the profound impact of outmigration on the Caribbean region and highlights the urgent need for comprehensive strategies to address its repercussions. Yo, what is the Jamaican population now? Jamaica population is 2.8 million. Wow. 1.1 people from Jamaica living outside. 2.8 living in Jamaica. Right? And that 2.8 is as of 2022. So we're going to get to a point where there's probably more Trinis, more Jamaicans. I already know what's happening to Guyana. There's going to be more Caribbean people that are living outside of the Caribbean than living in the Caribbean. That's what he is saying, and that's the trend. There are going to be more people of Caribbean origin living outside than in the Caribbean. And because when you get to a point where you are educated, I mean, I've talked about this. This is basically where, companies are wilding started from. I am not going to go through all of the degrees and education to come out to work in jobs that really don't exist in the Caribbean, forcing you to leave. And then even when you do find something close to what you graduated from, the money isn't there. The fact that you have jobs that are asking for degrees and asking for a master's only to pay you $1,000 to $1,500 US is wild. Absolutely wild. And again, to me, it's not worth the education. It's not worth me. I'm not going to do a degree or a master's to come out and make 10,000 TT. I'm not going to go do a degree to go and make 1,000 US or 1,500 US a month. I'm not doing that. Look, I seen this week that a car company, one of our largest car companies selling cars, they're looking for a car sales rep and asking for degrees. And if you see the comments, hundreds of comments, a degree to go and sell cars? Why are we doing that? Why are we doing that? So the jobs are not aligned with the education, and the pay is not aligned with what you're doing. Now, you can argue that many people, many countries around the world, a lot of them are arguing the same things too. Rising costs of living, the money's not matching the jobs, inflation is outpacing your salaries. Yeah, but again, you feel it more when you're in a country, in a small island, and you've gone through all this education. Maybe you were one of the people that went outside. You went to the UK, you went to the States, you went to Canada and got your first world education. Then you come back and your jobs are paying you peanuts. And then when you think about how much money and time you've invested, did you do all of that to get paid what you're getting paid in the Caribbean? Peanuts? Yo, when I was at the cybersecurity symposium in Bahamas in November, October, somewhere there. There was a cybersecurity specialist working for the Jamaican government, and he went to Harvard, and he was like, yo, his dream was always to go to Harvard, come back, and help be a part of building Jamaica. That was what he wants to do. And he's like, and when he right before he graduated, he was offered a job in the private sector in the States. And then he was offered a job in the Jamaican government for cybersecurity. And he's like, yo, the job with the Jamaican government was paying 500% less than what I was going to get in the private sector if I stayed in the States. And he's like, well, you know what? Let me go back and start to help Jamaica because I could always move. I could always migrate, right? I could always migrate. So he comes back and starts working in the Jamaican government. And he's like, yo, we have computers inside there running Windows XP. He's like, so not only am I underpaid, but we also don't even have the right tools for me to do my job. And that's what happens when you are part of a small island developing state, because we don't even have the funding to do the things that we need to do properly. So you're not getting paid. You don't have the right tools. You don't have the right technology. You don't have the right teams. You're surrounded by people who may have never left the island, so limited perspective on how things should be done. Worse yet, a lot of people have an ego about them because they're a big fish in a small pond. And they might have never left or just left for vacation but never worked anywhere else or never worked for an international company. And they have this ego about them, and you got to contend with that. And you're just looking at these people like, yo, you have never done anything remotely close to what I have done or even been exposed to what I have been exposed to. And I have to deal with your attitude that you think you know what you're doing or what you're talking about. And you have no idea because you're stuck in this tiny ass bubble. And it happens all the time. And for somebody, if you are somebody who has been exposed to the wider world or the bigger problems or to vastly more amounts of information and systems and how people do things, or how the best of the best do things, to come back to a small island and deal with the quote unquote small island mindset, especially in the corporate space, from people who have never been exposed or done 1% of what you've done or been exposed to. It's frustrating. I'll give you an example of what I mean. When I first came here, my first job that I took in Trinidad was working at DirecTV. I was only at DirecTV for like 4 months because I almost lost my mind. And I remember when I came, we do training, and after training, and I was working in loyalty and retention. I remember I still had questions on how to do particular things, procedures and processes or whatever. And I kept asking them, I'm like, yo, where do you guys not have an intranet? Do you guys not have like your own knowledge base, your own knowledge bank, your own internal portal that people could go to the portal, type in whatever to see all of your policies and procedures? There could be a video or write-up. And they're like, no. And that was so new to me. Again, this is my first job I took in Trinidad, because since I was 18, every single job, everywhere I've worked, everybody had a knowledge bank, an internal intranet, where any questions, problems you had, you search the intranet. The procedure is there, and it could be in video format because maybe it's showing you how to do something in the system, or there's a written format, a step-by-step guide. They never had that. So I was like, yo, how are you guys running a company and there's so much misinformation? Because that was one of the biggest problems. Depending on who you asked, everybody had a different way of doing things. So they pulled me into a meeting one day and they're like, hey, we heard your concern. We want to engage you on a special project. We want you to document all of the policies and procedures and then load it into like a Google Drive, and then the rest of the team will do that. And I was like, what? That's not my job. And I'm new. I was only there for like a month. And they hit me with that. And I was so confused about that. But that's mentally where these organizations are at, right? They've never seen these things. And every company I have worked for since, nobody has that. So it's a bunch of broken telephone and blind leading the blind, wrong leading the wrong in almost every single organization, right? So that's a major problem. Moving on. The lack of opportunities. So we had touched on that a bit, right? There aren't much opportunities when you get to that certain point in your career, and many organizations say they want change, but even when they do invest in training, or even when they say they want to make significant changes, what they really want is they want to make more revenue. Maybe their revenue is taking a dip and they want to make more revenue, but they don't want to or can't overhaul their operations to right size their operations in today's day in order to move forward. So whether it be because of companies unionize and the union is pushing back, nope, you got to digitally transform with the people that you have here. Yeah, but we don't need half of y'all, because if we digitally transform, you're redundant. Well, then we're not digitally transforming. You're getting pushback from them. Or you have companies that just don't have, proper HR, and they don't know how to coach people out to remove the people they no longer need. They no longer need, and they don't have people that they can. They don't have a department, or they don't have a consultant that can come in and look at their policies and procedures and then optimize it and right size it and tell them, hey, you guys are doing all of these things manually. These are what you can systemize or automate, or not even just automate, but you have these pieces of technology or software that you guys can bring in to speed up the processes, and this will cut your workforce labor down in this department by 60%. So you won't need, 60% of these people. You can get rid of them because this piece of technology is taking over, going to do what they do, and it will make the rest of the department even more efficient. Less red tape, we don't have these things happening like that, right? And it's causing major problems because most companies' labor bills are very high. So they're not going to invest in new skill sets, or whenever they realize, we do need a new person, but we don't have the budget, that's when they try to push all of these specializations into one role for a meager salary. And you're here thinking to myself, I really went through my degree. I went and got my master's. I went and volunteered, got experience. And this is the opportunity that I'm faced with. I remember asking somebody the other day. I was like, now that you graduated with your master's, how much money would you like to make? And they were like, if I could make 10 to 15,000 TT, I'd be set. Now, 15,000 TTD to USD is $2,200 US. My friend, the average one bedroom in Toronto is over $2,000. Average one bedroom apartment is over $2,000. You're homeless. You're homeless. And again, I say, I'm not going to go and do a degree or a master's to come out and make 10,000, 15,000 TT. It's not worth it. I could make that money without a degree. And if you don't know how to do that, that's on you. But you don't need a degree to make 10,000 TT dollars is no money. That is pocket change. And again, that's where having that worldly perspective means something. Because we're not limited to opportunities in Trinidad, right? You don't have to work for a Trinidad company. You don't have to. You could let somebody else do it, but you don't have to. There are skills that you can acquire. There are jobs you can take. There are clients you can get that don't live in the Caribbean. And you can be paid in US dollars. You can be paid in pounds. Like, we have all of these opportunities. But unless you're willing to educate yourself, it's never going to happen for you. So when I say $10,000 to $15,000, when you have a global perspective of what some of these skills are worth, you're not going to take these jobs that they're giving you. And instead, you're going to put yourself in the right situation to go, whether it be remote work, whether it be you get a visa to go migrate and go work for different companies. There's so many options available for us when it comes to work. If you have acquired the knowledge and the skills to do particular jobs, you do not have to limit yourself to Trinidad and Tobago or the Caribbean, which is directly contributing to our out-migration because of that lack of opportunity, right? It's directly impacting it, but that's what it is right now. And until we can step back and see how all these things are linked together, we're never going to figure this shit out. What really needs to happen in the Caribbean is the Caribbean, and this is not going to happen because, again, people have, these problems predate me, and people have been talking about this for 30 plus years and saying it's the same thing. Until the Caribbean becomes CARICOM, and it's one central bank, it's one currency, and we have free movement to move and settle and work throughout all of the CARICOM countries, reduce travel for Caribbean nationals, for CARICOM nationals, we're going to be in this position forever. No, not really forever, because it's going to get exasperated where, again, more people, the majority of Caribbean people will just be we're just going to be building up the diaspora. And the rich will just come here to the Caribbean to settle down and retire. And that's just what the Caribbean is going to become. All right? We're on trend to do that. So if you don't have that global perspective to say, all right, I now have this degree, I have this master's, I have these skills. This is what the world market is for my skills. Is there opportunities for me remotely? What are the opportunities for me to migrate? What are the What are the things that I can do to negotiate and demand a better salary locally? Like, you got to be thinking about all these things. And until the organizations themselves start to do their own research and development and optimize their own companies to cut down on the labor force, bring in the right people, the right technology that will help build the right processes, they're not going to be able to cut down the labor bill, invest in technology that's going to decrease their labor bill, and then they could now redirect those funds to pay people better and pay the right people. All that stuff is linked. And then that's the only way it's going to be attractive for people to stay. The majority of these companies, honestly, if there was a company or something that went around that identified all the businesses that helped them right size their business to have the right mix of tools, the right mix of technology, the right mix of skill sets, I'm almost positive that 60% of the labor force working in almost all companies would be gone. They would be gone. And then you could pay the right people the right amount of money to make it attractive, because now you have those funds available. And those people who were cut are going to be forced to upskill if they want to find a place and get a job. And that's also what's not happening too. We're not upskilling to a point that makes us relevant for today's market. Finally, because, I like to keep my things under an hour, but the last point I want to bring up is that, and again, this is just me talking to my inner circle and seeing conversations online, in particular to this point. We're no longer being challenged. Too many people, whether, like I said, inner circle or just conversations online, they're no longer feeling like they are challenged anymore being in the Caribbean. And it's leading to them being bored or understanding that they have hit the ceiling and there's no further for them to go unless they get foreign clients or they migrate. We have a lot of people doing amazing things. We have so many Trinis doing amazing things. Shout out to my guy, Dareem Jeffrey, the owner and founder of EcoWash. Dareem is traveling the world, meeting with governments, meeting with a whole laundry list of environmental people with EcoWash and his water sustainability project. And that man might revolutionize water conservation everywhere else in the world except for Trinidad. Because whilst they put him on a pedestal everywhere else in the world, the only reason we even put Dareem on a pedestal here is we like to see that he's outside of Trinidad doing great things. But it's not making any impact here locally. Now, if he came up with this and only had this vision of Trinidad, he might have got frustrated and did something else. He might have been grinding for a while and then realized he's hit this ceiling and it's not going to go any further in Trinidad and say, shit, I might got to do something else. But the fact that he has gained this global perspective now, and now, the man out in Geneva, the man out in friggin' Africa, the man out in Europe, the man all over the place. And like I said, he really might build an amazing water sustainability project somewhere else. But he has that global perspective now, and he sees that, what he has is something major. The man might never impact water conservation in Trinidad because mindsets and willpower, right? Car washes, regular car washes are rammed everywhere you go. He created EcoWash that uses no water to wash your car. But guess what? Everywhere you go, all the regular car washes that use tons and tons and tons of gallons of water every day ram out every single day. So he might never make that impact in Trinidad because he also has to change the culture. And you don't really see that happening, right? But he's not limited. And the more he gets onto the global stages, he'll realize there's more to be done globally than in Trinidad. So, coming back to my question of, is it time to migrate even temporarily? It's time to migrate, yes. There's more opportunities and avenues to migrate. And I really believe that everybody that can should at least spend a year outside of Trinidad to personally develop themselves, gain new perspectives, work, live, eat in another country for an extended period of time so you could really see how things are outside. And then if you decide to come back to Trinidad, you're going to have a greater appreciation for the country you just left and also an appreciation for your own home country. And you'll be better equipped to solve problems here. We know what our problems are, but we're not solving them. And we're not solving them because we keep on putting the wrong leaders in place. Right? We keep on putting the wrong people in charge of operations. But maybe we start to get better leaders that have better perspectives, that have spent significant time outside, and then they come back. And now there's more of a will, and there's more of a way, and there's a mindset to build the Caribbean and Trinidad and Tobago to really be a destination that people want to stay because they can. Right now, all this education you guys doing, yeah, the opportunities are more than likely not going to be there for you in the way that you would like. Very low pay, very little opportunity, and you are now educated and you want to put those things to use. There's not many places for you to come out with all of that education and put to practice. Right? You need to have that global perspective. You need to start being challenged. Many of us are feeling bored. Many of us are not challenged. Many of us are having the same conversations about the same thing in your industry. And you're like, how many more years are you going to talk about this exact same problem? How many more years can I tell you to get a website? How many more years am I going to tell you that you need to have e-commerce if you want to participate in the global economy? How many more years can I say that? And then at some point, it affects me because while the rest of the world is moving at the speed of light and things are evolving at a much higher pace, my own development is now stifled because I'm not talking about the future. I'm not learning about the future. I'm learning more about how to simplify my message about the basics and how to find ways to make it easier for you to do the basics. And also because there's so much red tape, I'm spending more energy learning workarounds and loopholes for you to be able to do the basics than progressive conversation. And it impacts me mentally. And 2024, a year where I felt like I had the best year of my life in 2023, 2024 has felt like I have slowed down because I am not even being challenged. It's the same conversation I've been having for how many years now? I can pull up workshops I did in 2018 and it would still be relevant to an audience in the entire Caribbean region. Think about that. I could pull up my workshops right now from 2018 and it'd still be relevant in the Caribbean. And people would treat it like this is gold. Yeah, but I did this how many years ago? You know? So, yeah. Is it time? Yes. Even if it's temporarily. All right? I will link to my article in the show notes about the digital nomad visas. Go check that article out or listen to the previous episode on digital nomad visas and lifestyle. Because, again, there's so many opportunities for you to migrate now. You want to take advantage of them, okay? Even if it's temporarily. Come back better, filled, and let's really try to solve these problems. But we need you to have more perspective, okay? All right. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to, like, the podcast episode. If you do it on, if you're listening from Apple Podcasts, you could rate the podcast. If you're listening on Spotify, you can rate the podcast. And don't forget, if you really enjoyed the episode, please do me a solid. Drop a review of the podcast. The reviews continue to help grow the Digipreneur family all across the world. Everybody reads the reviews first before they decide to dive in. And it also keeps me, it keeps me up on what you guys want and if I'm doing my good job, right? Don't forget you can follow me over at KeronRose.com to learn more about building your digital presence and monetizing your platforms. Also, check out the Digipreneur.fm website to stay up to date on all things related to the podcast. That is it from me today, folks. Enjoy your Sunday and take care.
You've been listening to the Digiboss, Keron Rose. We hope your notepad was filled after this episode. Make sure to like, rate, and review the show. The learning doesn't stop, folks. And to make sure you don't miss any gems from the Digiboss, go over and follow him on all social media platforms at Keron Rose. Folks, don't just sit there with a notepad. We need you to implement at least one thing into your business before the next episode. That's the only way your business levels up. Thanks for listening to Digipreneur FM. Now go be great.